Hi students, in this lecture we are going to learn about sequence of tenses. I hope that you have studied and understood tenses and their uses properly. Now, what do you mean by sequence of tenses? Sequence of tenses is the principle according to which the tense of the verb in the subordinate clause follows the tense of the verb in the principal clause. What do you mean by principal clause and subordinate clause? Principal clauses are those clauses which can stand by itself, which can convey the meaning by itself. And what do you mean by subordinate clause? A clause which requires the present or the support of principal clause to complete its meaning. There are two other names given there. We can substitute principal clause as independent clause and subordinate clause can be said as dependent clause. Now there are some rules which governs the sequence of tenses. We shall learn one by one. First rule. If the principal clause is in the present or future tense, the tense of the verb in the subordinate clause can be past, present or future depending on the sense conveyed. What do you mean by sense conveyed? Depending on the meaning which that particular clause conveys. Look at these examples. Principal clause. He says. Subordinate clause, that he went to Patna. You can see in the principal clause, he says. Says is the verb in the simple present tense and which is followed by subordinate clause, that he went to Patna. Simple past is used. Second example, she says that she will surely win the prize. There you can see in the subordinate clause, simple future tense is used, even though the principal clause is simple present. The third example, Taban realizes that he did not do the right thing. There you can see principal clause is having simple present tense and subordinate clause is used there, that he did not do, which means simple past tense is used. So I hope this is understood for you. Whenever a subordinate clause expresses a purpose, condition or time, its verb is always in the present tense. Even if the verb in the principal clause is in the present or future. I repeat it. Whenever a subordinate clause expresses a purpose or condition or time, its verb is always in the present tense. Even if the verb in the principal clause is in the present or future. Look at this example. He will do anything so that he may escape imprisonment. So in this sentence, which is the subordinate clause, so that he may escape imprisonment is the subordinate clause. This convey a purpose. So the verb you can see in the principal clause, future tense is used. He will do. He will do anything so that he may escape imprisonment. So whenever a subordinate clause expresses a purpose or condition, its verb is always in the present tense. You can see in the subordinate clause, the verb is given present tense. He may escape. Another example. We can excuse you if you promise not to worry others again. Here, which is the principal clause? We can excuse you is the principal clause, which is a subordinate clause. If you promise not to worry others again. There you can see the subordinate clause conveys a condition. And you can see that subordinate clause is given in the simple present tense. Now, one more example. We shall leave when the meeting is over. Which is a principal clause there? We shall leave. Subordinate clause, when the meeting is over. You can see the verb in the subordinate clause is that is in simple present tense, which talks about time when the meeting is over. This is the rule number 1. Now, rule 2. The past tense in the principal clause must be followed by a tense of the past time in the subordinate clause. Example. He said that he had finished the work. Okay. Now, can you tell me which is the principal clause? The principal clause is he said, which is a subordinate clause, that he had finished the work. You can see that when the principal clause is past tense, what happens? Any past form can be used as the subordinate clause. That he had finished the work is a past perfect tense used there. Second example. He told me that he had finished the work last Sunday. Again you can see which is the verb in the principal clause. He told me. Told, simple past tense. And we can see in the subordinate clause that he had finished work last Sunday, which is used there. Past perfect tense is used. I hope this is clear too. There are 2 rules we have discussed. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. First one. A past tense in the principal clause may be followed by a present tense in subordinate clause when the subordinate clause expresses some habitual or universal fact. What is that? A past tense in the principal clause can be followed by a present tense in the subordinate clause when it expresses habitual or universal fact. Look at these examples. She said that honesty is the best policy. She said is the principal clause. That honesty is the best policy. Is the verb in the simple present tense. Now, second example. Copernicus concluded that Earth goes round the sun. Here, Copernicus concluded is a principal clause which is in past tense. And you can see that subordinate clause that Earth goes is used there simple present tense. Why? Because it expresses a universal fact. I hope this is clear to you. Now the second exception to this rule. When the subordinate clause is introduced by some conjunction of comparison, example like than, this rule does not apply at all. Whatever we have discussed in the rule, it does not apply at all when a condition is that when the subordinate clause is introduced by some conjunction of comparison, this rule does not apply at all. Any tense can be followed by any tense. Look at this example. She will like you better than she likes me. She will like you better than she likes me. Which is a verb in the principal clause? Future tense. She will like you. Will is a verb in simple future tense is used there. So you can see a comparison, conjunction of comparison is used there. Than is used there, so that She likes. Simple present is used there. Any tense can be used there. Now, the third exception to this rule. When the subordinate clause is an adverb clause. What do you mean by adverb clause? A clause which functions like an adverb is called as adverb clause. Which denoting place, reason or comparison. It may be in any tense as required by the sense, even if there is past tense in the principal clause. Example: a sacred river once flowed where now lies the village. You can see there, when the subordinate clause is an adverb clause. Can you tell me which is a subordinate clause there? An adverb clause there? Where now lies the village. Where now lies the village, an adverb clause which denote a place, adverb of place. She succeeded because she is hardworking. Again, you can see subordinate clause which talks about, which conveys reason. Because she is hardworking is the adverb clause of reason. What will happen? Any tense can be used. That's why she succeeded because she is hardworking. In the principal clause, simple past tense is used there, but in the subordinate clause, what is used there? Simple present tense is used there. Now, there are some more points to be remembered. If the conjunction introducing the subordinate clause is lest, it is always followed by should. We have already discussed in class 9 about it. Whenever you see the conjunction lest, it should always followed by should. Look at this example. Leda works lest she should fail. I think most of the board exam, many of the board examination question paper, these kind of questions are given there in order to confuse you. It might be asked. So you have to remember it. Leda works lest she should fail. Why? Because should is used there. Because you can say the subordinate clause is introduced by lest. Which is the subordinate clause there? Lest she should fail. Now, run fast lest you should miss the train. Again, which is a principal clause there? Run fast is the principal clause. And subordinate clause, lest you should miss the train. So, whenever if the conjunction introducing the subordinate clause is lest, it is always followed by should. Now, one more point. When a subordinate clause is introduced by as though or as if, the past tense is generally used to indicate the present time and the past perfect to denote past time. Example: she pretends as if she were blind. So, subordinate clause is introduced by as if. That is why here which tense is used there? Past tense is used there in order to talk about the present time. Which is the past tense used there? As if she were blind. Were blind. Where is used there? Past tense in order to talk about the present time. Second example. He walked as if he had been lame. Which means past perfect tense is used in the subordinate clause which is introduced by the as if, by as if. Past perfect tense is used there in order to talk about the past time. Okay, one more example I'll tell you. They behave as though they were mad, which means subordinate clause is introduced by as though and which is followed by the past tense which talks about present time. I hope this is clear to you. Now, some more point about the conditional sentences when we use conditional sentence. In conditional sentences type 1, the tense of the verb in the principal clause is future and the tense of the verb in the subordinate clause, definitely it will be present tense, simple present tense. We have studied that. Type 1, type 2 and type 3 conditional in class 9. Do you remember? Once again, you can recollect from your memory. Look at this example. Unless Tapan apologizes, he will be punished. Which is the verb in the principal clause? Unless Tapan apologizes, he will be punished. He will be punished is the verb in the principal clause, that is in future tense according to the rule. And what happens? Which is the subordinate clause? Unless Tapan apologizes. I hope this is clear to you. So please revise these rules and regulations which is given in the rule in the book, and you have an assignment in page number 82. You have to do it as your homework. Thank you very much. God bless you.